What if the reason you are exhausted, underfunded, and constantly struggling is not because God is silent, but because you are asking Him to finance something He never assigned to you? What if heaven is not withholding, but refusing to sponsor confusion? Stay with me, because by the end of this message, you will understand why some doors stay closed, why certain efforts never multiply, and how alignment, not ambition, is the currency heaven responds to. There is a dangerous belief many people carry without realizing it. The belief that sincerity is enough. The belief that passion alone obligates heaven. The belief that because something looks good, feels noble, or impresses people, God must be involved. But heaven does not respond to good ideas. It responds to divine assignment. Here is the truth many avoid. God is not obligated to fund what He did not authorize. He is not moved by noise, pressure, or comparison. He does not bless imitation. He only finances responsibility that originates from Him. The most draining position a person can live in is working hard on something that is not theirs. You can pray over it, fast over it, and speak faith into it, but if it is not assigned, it will never carry grace. And anything without grace will demand effort instead of flowing with provision. This is why some people work less and produce more. This is why others work endlessly and still lack peace. Grace is not connected to effort, it is connected to ownership. Heaven only backs what belongs to you. Assignment is not chosen, it is discovered. It is revealed through burden, not ambition. You are not assigned to what excites your ego. You are assigned to what stirs responsibility in your spirit. And responsibility is expensive. That is why God finances it. When you step into something not assigned to you, you may experience temporary momentum, but you will eventually face resistance, confusion, and exhaustion. Why? Because you are carrying weight you were never built to carry. Heaven refuses to assist rebellion disguised as vision. God does not co-sign competition. If you entered something because someone else succeeded in it, you are already outside of alignment. Heaven does not multiply copies, it multiplies originals, and provision always follows originality. Many people pray for expansion when heaven is calling for subtraction. Letting go of what is not yours is not failure. It is obedience. And obedience is the fastest path to provision. The moment you release what you were never assigned, peace returns. Clarity sharpens, supply unlocks. You do not need more hustle, you need more alignment. You do not need louder prayers, you need clearer direction. Once you stand in what is truly yours, provision stops being a miracle and starts being a pattern. Heaven funds assignment, not ambition. And this truth unsettles many people because ambition feels spiritual when it is dressed in good intentions. Ambition can pray. Ambition can quote scripture. Ambition can even produce activity. But ambition does not create obligation in heaven. God is not impressed by intensity. He responds to authority. And authority only comes from assignment. You can desire something deeply and still not be authorized to carry it. Desire is human, assignment is divine. Many people confuse passion with permission. Just because you feel strongly about something does not mean you were sent to do it. Passion can come from exposure, comparison, admiration, or insecurity. Assignment comes from responsibility placed on you by God. It carries weight, not excitement. It carries burden, not ego. Ambition asks, what do I want to do? Assignment asks, what have I been entrusted with? This is why ambition often produces frustration. When you are ambitious, you are trying to convince heaven to follow your plan. When you are assigned, heaven is already committed because it was God's idea before it was ever yours. Ambition tries to move God. Assignment moves with God. One is noisy, the other is supported. God does not finance ideas just because they are impressive. He finances obedience. Heaven's economy is not built on creativity alone, but on alignment. There are many brilliant ideas that will never see provision because brilliance does not equal authorization. You can be gifted and still unsupported if you are operating outside of what you were sent to do. Ambition is often fueled by comparison. You see someone prosper in a lane and assume that lane is proof of blessing. But what you are seeing is grace on assignment, not proof that the assignment is transferable. Grace is not universal, it is specific. What works effortlessly for one person may destroy another, not because one is more spiritual, but because one is aligned. Assignment carries a different kind of energy. It does not need constant motivation because it is sustained by responsibility. You wake up to it not because you feel like it, but because you are accountable for it. God funds what He holds you responsible for. Responsibility is heaven's signature on your work. Ambition chases outcomes. Assignment accepts process. Ambition wants results quickly. Assignment is willing to grow slowly because it knows provision is guaranteed in the long run. Ambition is impatient because it is insecure. Assignment is steady because it is rooted. When God assigns you something, provision is not a reward, it is a necessity. He supplies because the assignment cannot be completed without His involvement. That is why heaven funds it. But when you choose something on your own, provision would only enable misalignment. So heaven withholds not out of punishment, but out of protection. Many prayers go unanswered not because they are wrong, but because they are misdirected. You are asking God to bless what He is trying to correct. You are asking Him to fund what He is asking you to release. Ambition prays for expansion while God is calling for realignment. Assignment does not compete. It does not rush. It does not need to prove itself. It simply functions. And where it functions, provision follows naturally. You stop striving because you are no longer trying to make something happen. You are stewarding something that already belongs to you. The moment you step fully into assignment, pressure lifts. You may still work hard, but the work feels clean. Resistance no longer confuses you. Delay no longer threatens you because you are not chasing success. You are carrying responsibility, and responsibility attracts divine backing without noise, without panic, without constant explanation. Grace only flows where responsibility is divinely given. And this is why some people can handle pressure without breaking, while others collapse under far less weight. Grace is not strength you generate. It is assistance you receive. It is the unseen support that makes a heavy assignment feel manageable. But grace is territorial. It operates only within the boundaries of what God has entrusted to you. Outside of that boundary, you are relying on yourself, and self-effort has limits. Responsibility is heaven's language. God does not empower intentions, He empowers trust. When something is assigned to you, it comes with accountability. You are answerable for it, and where there is accountability, there is supply. Grace shows up not because you ask loudly, but because heaven recognizes that something under your care must be sustained. Many people want grace without responsibility. They want ease without ownership. They want results without being entrusted. But grace is not a shortcut. It is a companion to assignment. It does not remove work, it removes unnecessary strain. When responsibility is real, grace makes room for endurance. This is why people often feel drained doing things they once felt excited about. Excitement fades when responsibility was never present. If God did not assign it, He did not attach grace to it. Over time, enthusiasm cannot replace support. Energy depletes, motivation weakens, and confusion sets in not because something is evil, but because it is unsupported. Grace is also directional. It does not just help you do more, it helps you do the right thing. When you are aligned, even correction feels constructive. Even resistance feels purposeful. But outside of responsibility, resistance feels hostile and correction feels like rejection. Responsibility matures you. When God places something in your care, He expects growth, not perfection. Grace allows space for learning without collapse. You can make mistakes and still be sustained because the assignment itself is protected. God does not withdraw grace every time you stumble within what He assigned. This is why some people survive seasons that should have destroyed them. They were not stronger, they were aligned. Grace compensated for what they lacked. But that same grace cannot be borrowed for areas outside assignment. You cannot expect supernatural strength for something heaven never asked you to carry. Many people misinterpret struggle as spiritual warfare when it is actually misalignment. You are fighting because you are holding something you were never meant to hold. Grace is absent, not as judgment, but as signal. Heaven is pointing you back to what you were entrusted with. Responsibility also sharpens focus. When something is truly yours, distractions lose power. You are not pulled in every direction because you know what you are accountable for. Grace protects your attention as much as your energy. It keeps you from wasting effort on things that do not matter to your assignment. God gives grace in proportion to trust. The more responsibility you carry that He assigned, the more grace becomes necessary. That is why small assignments feel simple and greater ones require deeper dependence. Grace grows with responsibility, not with desire. When you operate within assignment, you stop asking why others seem to advance faster. Comparison fades because grace personalizes the journey. You realize that your pace is not a problem. It is intentional. Grace does not rush what is being built properly. Outside of responsibility, even success feels empty. Inside of it, even hardship feels meaningful. Grace transforms pressure into purpose, but only where heaven has placed its trust. That is why alignment is not optional. It is the doorway through which grace enters and stays. God does not co-sign competition, and this truth confronts the hidden motives behind many pursuits that appear spiritual on the surface. Competition thrives on comparison, and comparison is never the language of assignment. The moment your direction is shaped by someone else's success, you are no longer responding to God, you are reacting to people. Heaven does not finance reactions. It only supports obedience. Many people enter lanes not because they were called, but because they were impressed. They saw visibility, influence, or reward, and assumed that blessing must be transferable. But grace does not migrate. It remains where God placed it. When you step into a space simply because it looks fruitful, you step into resistance you do not understand. You begin to compete with grace that was never meant for you. Competition creates pressure that assignment never reduces. When you are competing, you are constantly measuring progress, constantly adjusting to outperform, constantly proving relevance. But when you are assigned, progress is measured by faithfulness, not speed. Heaven does not ask you to outrun anyone. It asks you to stay aligned. God's work is not threatened by duplicates. He does not need backups or substitutes. He designs each assignment to fit a specific life, voice, and capacity. When you try to replace someone else or replicate their path, you dilute your own authority. You may gain attention, but you lose impact. Imitation feels safe because it looks tested, but imitation is often a shortcut that bypasses intimacy with God. It allows you to avoid asking hard questions about your own calling. Competition is easier than discovery, but heaven refuses to reward avoidance. It rewards surrender. This is why competition is exhausting. You are carrying standards that were never meant for you. You are chasing outcomes God never asked you to produce. And no matter how much effort you give, there is always someone ahead, someone louder, someone faster. Competition has no finish line. Assignment does. God does not multiply copies because copies create confusion. When too many people do the same thing for the wrong reason, clarity is lost. Heaven values distinction. That is why assignment often feels lonely at first. You are carving something specific, not joining a crowd. When God assigns you something, you no longer need to watch others closely. Their progress does not threaten you. Their success does not delay you. Their failure does not validate you. Competition feeds on attention. Assignment frees it. Many people assume competition sharpens excellence, but in the spiritual sense, competition erodes purity. You begin to adjust your message, your pace, your posture to stay relevant. Slowly, truth bends to performance, and heaven withdraws support when authenticity is compromised. Assignment does not rush to be seen. It is content with being effective. God is not impressed by visibility. He is invested in impact, and impact only comes when you are operating in your original design. The reason competition blocks provision is because it shifts trust. Instead of depending on God, you begin to depend on strategy, trends, and timing. You start watching people instead of listening to God. Heaven will not fund divided attention. When you step out of competition and into assignment, peace returns. You no longer feel the urge to prove, defend, or explain. You simply function, and where there is function without comparison, provision flows without resistance, because heaven recognizes its own work and supports what it originated. Effort increases when grace is absent, and many people misinterpret constant struggle as proof of dedication, when in reality it is often a signal of misalignment. There is a difference between working hard and striving. Hard work within assignment is strengthening. Striving outside of grace is draining. One builds capacity, the other consumes it. When grace is present, effort produces fruit. When grace is absent, effort produces fatigue. You can give the same energy, the same hours, the same discipline, and yet see completely different outcomes depending on alignment. Grace does not remove labor, but it removes resistance that labor alone cannot overcome. Striving begins when you try to compensate for what heaven is not supplying. You push harder because something is not responding. You add more force because progress feels slow. But force does not create favor. Favor flows where grace already exists. Effort without grace turns discipline into desperation. Many people believe that if they just try harder, God will eventually support them. But God does know. Respond to pressure. He responds to obedience. You cannot wear heaven down with effort. You either step into alignment or you exhaust yourself trying to replace grace with willpower. Grace creates momentum that effort cannot manufacture. It opens doors that planning cannot unlock. It connects you to people you could not position yourself for. When grace is active, help finds you. When it is absent, you must chase everything. This is why some people seem to advance with less effort. It is not because they are lazy or favored unfairly. It is because they are aligned. Their work is amplified, not multiplied by force, but by grace. Effort under grace feels lighter because it is shared. Striving also distorts perception. When you are exhausted, everything feels harder than it is. Small delays feel like rejection. Correction feels like attack. You lose clarity because fatigue clouds discernment. Grace protects not just outcomes, but mental and emotional stability. Effort without grace often leads to control. You start micromanaging because you no longer trust the process. You tighten your grip because you fear loss. But control is a sign that peace has been replaced by anxiety. Grace brings peace because it assures you that what is assigned is supported. God never intended for you to sustain divine work with human strength alone. That model leads to burnout. Grace is not optional, it is essential. When you remove it, you are left with pressure you were never designed to carry. Sometimes God allows effort to fail, so alignment can be questioned. Failure becomes an invitation to examine whether you are building what He asked you to build. Resistance is not always opposition, it is often redirection. When you are aligned, effort becomes purposeful. You know why you are working. You know what you are building. Even when progress is slow, there is peace. But when grace absent, speed does not satisfy. Success feels empty because it costs too much internally. The greatest danger is mistaking exhaustion for obedience. God does not require you to destroy yourself to prove faithfulness. He requires alignment. Grace is His confirmation. Where grace flows, effort is effective. Where grace is missing, effort only reveals that something needs to shift. Letting go of what is not yours is not failure, it is obedience, and obedience often feels like loss before it feels like freedom. Many people hold on because they fear that releasing something means admitting they were wrong, but heaven is not offended by correction. It is honored by surrender. God does not measure you by how long you held on, but by how quickly you obeyed once clarity arrived. What is not assigned to you will always demand justification. You will constantly need to explain why you are there, why you are doing it, why it should work. Assignment never needs defending. It carries quiet authority. Letting go of what is not yours restores that authority because you stop trying to validate yourself through outcomes. Obedience is often misunderstood as weakness because it requires humility. It asks you to step back from visibility, control, and familiarity. But obedience is not retreat, it is repositioning. You are not moving backward. You are moving into alignment. And alignment always precedes provision. Many people stay in the wrong place because something good once happened there. But past fruit does not guarantee future grace. Seasons change, assignments shift. What sustained you before may now be restricting you. Letting go is how you make room for what is next. There is a grief that comes with release. You grieve the time invested, the energy spent, the identity formed around it. But grief is not proof of mistake, it is proof of attachment. God does not waste what you learned. He redeploys it where it belongs. Obedience sharpens hearing. When you let go, noise quiets, confusion lifts. You begin to recognize the difference between pressure and peace. Pressure demands performance. Peace confirms alignment. God often removes what is loud so you can hear what is true. Letting go also exposes trust. You discover whether your security was in God or in the thing you were holding. Obedience asks you to trust that provision will not disappear just because you release control. God is not limited to one channel. When you obey, supply reroutes. Many people delay obedience because they are waiting for certainty. But obedience rarely comes with full explanation. It comes with instruction. Certainty is often the reward, not the prerequisite. You step first, then clarity follows. Heaven responds quickly to release. The moment you let go of what is not yours, peace returns, strength returns, creativity returns. It is as if weight lifts instantly because it was never meant to be carried. Obedience also protects you from resentment. Holding on to the wrong assignment breeds frustration. You begin to blame others, circumstances, or God. But when you release, resentment dissolves. You no longer feel trapped because you are no longer misaligned. Letting go realigns your identity. You stop defining yourself by roles you were never meant to keep. You begin to discover who you are beyond what you did. That discovery is necessary for the next assignment. God does not punish release. He rewards it with clarity. What you feared losing often turns out to be what was blocking you. Obedience creates space, and space is where new provision enters. The courage to let go is often the final act required before heaven responds. Provision is proof of alignment, not effort, and this truth challenges the belief that scarcity is always a test of faithfulness. F4. T alone does not obligate heaven. You can work tirelessly and still lack supply if what you are building is not aligned with what God assigned. Provision is not a reward for exhaustion. It is confirmation that you are standing in the right place. When something is truly aligned, provision follows it naturally. It may not arrive instantly, but it arrives consistently. There is a rhythm to it. Needs are met at the right time. Support appears when required. Not because you forced it, but because the assignment demands it. God funds what must succeed because He initiated it. Many people chase provision instead of alignment. They pursue resources, connections, and opportunities, assuming these things will validate their direction. But provision is not meant to be hunted. It is meant to respond. When you are aligned, you stop striving to be supplied. Supply begins to find you. Alignment simplifies life. You are no longer scattered, pulling from multiple sources, trying to keep everything alive. Focus returns, energy concentrates, provision increases not because you did more, but because waste was removed. God does not pour into confusion. He pours into clarity. Effort becomes dangerous when it replaces trust. You begin to believe that if you stop pushing, everything will collapse. But what God assigned is sustained by Him, not by your anxiety. Alignment allows rest without fear. You can pause without panic because you know provision is anchored in obedience. Provision also carries peace. Money without alignment increases stress. Opportunity without assignment creates pressure, but provision that comes from alignment feels stable. It does not demand compromise. It does not require you to abandon values. It fits within your capacity. God often uses provision as a compass. Where it flows easily, alignment is likely present. Where it is constantly blocked, something needs. Examination. This is not about entitlement, but about awareness. Heaven signals direction through supply. Many people fear that focusing on alignment will slow them down, but misalignment is what truly delays progress.